Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary spotlight on Rogan. Rogan is a 5-star rarity warrior. Rogan's story is that he's a tribal chief and one of the land's greatest warriors. And that's pretty much it. Rogan's companion is Sarah. She's a beast tribe warrior. Like, she's actually a human-cow hybrid. I thought the horns initially were just for show, but she's got the oxtail and everything. So she's literally a cowgirl. And I'm not trying to be derogatory, she's literally referred in the text as a cow tribe person. And I guess that's her story as well, she's just a cowgirl. I'll briefly go over Rogan's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on him. I won't be going over the details of his skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on the stats and skill values. Rogan's first skill is Warrior's Axe. This is a permanent skill that provides two passives for Rogan. The first is that the skill acts as a multi-hit skill. Rogan will attack 2 times. The skill also provides a small attack bonus. The second is that the skill applies a bleed DOT. Rogan's bleed will deal defense ignoring damage every turn. The bleed damage scales with Rogan's attack and can stack. Also remember that bleed deals 3 times damage to defenders. Rogan's second skill is Shield Pulverization. This is an additional damage skill that occurs after normal attack. This skill only applies to defenders. Rogan will deal barrier ignoring additional damage for every buff on the enemy defender. Rogan will also deal defense ignoring damage for every debuff on the enemy defender. It's worth noting that both of these additional damage skills ignore guards and activates regardless even if Rogan is silenced. The last and perhaps most important part of this skill is that it does not trigger reflection damage, meaning that the damage done by the skill cannot be reflected back at Rogan. Rogan's third skill is the Last Warrior. This is a special buff that Rogan gains when battle begins. The skill alone doesn't do anything and serves as a countdown. After this buff wears off, Rogan gets a new temporary buff called the Grand Entrance that actually has an effect. The Grand Entrance allows Rogan to deal fixed additional damage before his normal attack that scales with his attack stat. Rogan's Awakening skill is Permanent Stats Weakening Immunity. Rogan is permanently immune to stats weakening. At plus 11, Rogan gains incoming damage reduction as well. Rogan is a multifunctional warrior that is designed to address defender units in nearly every way possible. Rogan's additional damage against defenders can ignore guards, barriers, and defense, and scales with the enemy defender's buffs and debuffs. Basically, the more stuff on the enemy defender, the more damage that Rogan will output, and remember that he hits twice. Rogan isn't only just good at killing defenders however, DOTs are also very strong against many warrior units. Rogan's third skill allows Rogan to begin dealing high amount of fixed damage should he survive long enough. At plus 15, Rogan only needs to wait 18 turns, which means that so long as Rogan survives the first round, he probably has ramped up by then, and is at that point where very few units can properly survive him. Another thing to mention is that Rogan's impressive attack range. Rogan strikes a plus range that targets the front tile, which works well with his role as a tank buster. Rogan's main weakness is the lack of defensive options. While his stats weakening immunity is helpful at times and his HP and incoming damage reduction is decent, he will still not be able to survive most hits unless a support is in play that can help shield him from damage. The lack of DOT or attack interference immunity can also potentially be exploited by enemies. Rogan's preferred runes are flat assault runes. Every damage source of Rogan scales with attack, and Rogan's base attack is low enough where flat assault runes are generally better. Rogan's Soul Gear amulet should also follow that as well. I'll go over what Rogan counters. Rogan's ability to ignore guards, barriers, and defense can be pivotal against many defender units. In particular, Rogan is very strong against Caleron, Benchina, Glacia, Orfina, Cecilia, Arcan, Vermont, Isaac, Granhilder, and Cali. Rogan's matchup against Glacia, Granhilder, and Cali is nice because Rogan's additional damage skill cannot be reflected back at him. Regular counter skills can still work however, like Isaac's and Kalen's. Lettercrad is a mixed bag as he can definitely run some combinations that make him harder to kill for Rogan. Many Lettercrad combinations however are very weak to him, and the only Lettercrad combination that could potentially survive him is if Lettercrad has high defense combined with debuff immunity so he can avoid taking the defense ignoring part of Rogan's skill set. Rogan isn't just good at killing defenders however, Rogan is one of the best counters against Jhin due to his bleed. Rogan's fixed damage is also applied before normal attack as well, which is another nail in the coffin for Jhin. Before normal attack, the damage also allows Rogan to kill Siegmund before he gets his guard activated. In general, fixed damage gives Rogan a strong matchup against high defense units like Dolphy, Levia, Eden, and Angelica. Another very interesting counter is Rogan's ability to one-shot Lucius with the Iron Maiden spell. Iron Maiden is a spell that prevents any kind of healing, even when a unit resurrects. Rogan can strike Lucius once and activate his resurrection but leave him at 1 life. His additional damage procs afterwards, which ignores guards and finishes off Lucius at the 1 life without having to wear down his death guard, which activates Lucian's 2nd life. Rogan then attacks again and finishes off Lucius for good. The strategy is hard to implement in Arena due to the guessing nature of Arena, but it can be very useful in Guild War or Mystic Island. I'll go over some Rogan counters now. Rogan's main additional damage only works on defenders, so tanky units of different classes can potentially hold him off. Valtor is one that comes to mind due to his mage typing and high HP along with DOT immunity. You could also use Lillian as well. Before Rogan gets his fixed damage, many 100% defense and debuff immune units of a non-defender class could survive him, like Angelica, Levia, and Dalvi. Ymir and Lucius could also be used to hold Rogan off. Rogan's double attack does kinda make him better than most characters against Lucius, but it's better than having Rogan mow down your other units. If Rogan doesn't have the Iron Maiden spell on his end, then Lucius is still a great wall. While Rogan's additional damage can't be reflected normally, he still takes damage from regular counters. Isaac and Kaelin can still threaten him. I'm always reluctant to mention this particular character, but Larkus can also work, as Larkus is also DOT immune. Rogan is also just not very durable overall, so most hits should kill him if he's unprotected. So some synergies with Rogan. Immunities and protection are vital for him, which makes units like Veronia, Babariba, Vanaka, and Delzahidne enticing. You could also run immortality units to help him as well, like Belieth and Galania. Rogan's good matchups against many defenders including Jhin, and also his ability to target front means that he can clear the way to help your other units eat away at the later parts of the formation. He synergizes well with Alec particularly, but also does well with Victor and Taylor. Okay, so for my opinion. So now it's Rogan's time for his companion rework, and his role and design is pretty much the same. He's still a front-hitting defender killer, except he's going the extra mile now. Rogan's skill set is nearly overloaded with every anti-defender weapon to the point where it's kind of silly. He has multi-hit, bleed, defense ignoring damage that ignores guards, barrier ignoring damage that ignores guard, and a fixed damage component that applies before normal attack as a final middle finger among it all. Rogan's skill set is so top heavy in fact that he actually carries a lot of good matchups against warriors as well, primarily Jhin and Angelica. Rogan is a very dangerous character and is very good in World Arena and regular arena. He's also one of the better units for Guild War attacks. So the question begs, should you invest in Rogan? My answer is yes for this one. Rogan is similar to Dwayne in that he has a lot of power in his kit that can allow him to be relevant for a long time. If you run warrior compositions, you absolutely should consider Rogan. If you don't run warrior compositions at all, then yes, you can kind of pass on him, as he's really dependent on certain supports to really shine, whereas some units like Angelica or Dwayne have defensive mechanics that allow them to be more flexibly used in any team. As I mentioned earlier, Rogan doesn't just destroy defenders, he kind of annihilates many other things as well, and having a defense ignoring bleed is insanely valuable to beat the likes of Jhin, which many warrior teams tend to get stuck on. Another nice thing about Rogan is that he's fairly lenient to build. He's pretty functional right off the bat, but +3 is where his bleed actually becomes very dangerous. He's PvP ready at +9 where his additional damage skill is optimized. Anything beyond that will help his third skill mostly by reducing the time it takes for him to begin doing fixed damage. This is very useful, so consider building him slowly from there, but he does his job pretty nicely before that. Rogan will start producing results early on, making him a pretty efficient investment. Overall, Rogan's rework is a really solid one. I don't feel like he's insanely crazy and carries a decent repertoire of weaknesses, but if this guy's let loose, he will just annihilate things. I mean, just look at him with those double huge axes. His companion is kind of cool too, but that double axe thing looks really dangerous for the person wielding it. As for aesthetics, I choose Rogan. I like big men with axes. The other design's a bit too horny for me, but I do appreciate the humor in this horniness at least. Thanks for watching my Rogan Mercenary Spotlight. Stay tuned for more.